Welcome. It's nice to have you here. So today I'm going to share with you a very simple but very powerful truth that can help you to be vastly more successful in every domain of your life. And so in order to do that, I need to first provide the proper context, because otherwise what I can tell you would just sort of go in one ear and out the other ear, and you just be on to the next thing, and then you wouldn't get the benefit of it. So for those who have been here before, you probably already expect as much, but we'll be reviewing some of the basics that will set the context, and then I can share this powerful truth with you, which will help you, as I say, to be massively successful in every area of your life. And it's a very simple thing. It's extraordinarily simple. In fact, it's part of its power is its incredible simplicity, because, a big part of the problem that we face is that we fail to keep our attention with something long enough to get results. Maybe today is more challenging in that regard than any other time in the past, at least recent past, for most people, because we have been trained by and large by the culture and by the technology to have a very short attention span. And that causes us a lot of difficulty. And so when we learn not only how to focus, but how to focus in the right way, our lives become massively more powerful. We become empowered. So that's what I'm going to be sharing with you. So first of all, what's the real context for the whole thing? What's the point of the meeting? Why are we here? Why am I here? And I feel that that's really important so that you can know if this is the right place for you or not. I don't want to waste your time. So the overarching purpose of this meeting is self-realization. And what that means is that you can know yourself. You can know yourself. And when you know yourself, then you experience all of the qualities of yourself, such as clarity, peace, harmony, abundance, prosperity, freedom, happiness, health, wholeness, etc. So pretty much everything that you actually want is available to you directly when you know yourself, because you are already that. But there's no shortcut to that. Many of us have tried the shortcuts and they don't work. At least they didn't work for you, and they didn't work for me. So we have to take our actual path, not a shortcut. And the actual path is that you have to find out who you are through your life. And so that's what we explore here. That's what I explore here, is how you can know yourself through your life, through practical application. It's not about just getting a bunch of information. If that worked, everybody would be enlightened already, especially with the ADHD problem that I already described, right? It's like people are flitting from one thing to the next, one YouTube video to the next all day long. If it was just about, and 2x speed, right? So you're ingesting an enormous amount of information, but the information alone doesn't do it for you. It's the practical application. You actually have to look for yourself in order to get the real value. Because again, it's about self-knowledge. It's about self-realization. It's about knowing who you are and about having confidence in that. So it's one thing for somebody to give you the answer. I could give you the answer. You've already gotten the answer. You already know that. You are consciousness. There's oneness. You are that. We already know the right answer, but it doesn't do you a lot of good because it has to be directly known. It's not just the knowledge, it's the practical application that gives you the confidence so that you actually know the truth of it. It's not just that somebody gave you the answer, you know the truth of it for yourself. And so that's what we're doing here. Now, in general, and this is a broad generalization, but in general, there are two approaches that people take in life trying to get the answer of who they are and what their purpose is and what life is all about, and fulfilling themselves, experiencing fulfillment. One of them is what I term the bottom up approach. And so I say bottom up because imagine a pyramid. Okay, so if you imagine a pyramid, then it's triangular shaped. I mean, it's three-dimensional, but roughly triangular shaped. So at the bottom of the pyramid is broad. The top of the pyramid is a point. So we could say this pyramid is representing that at the top is a singularity. Okay, this point is a singularity, and at the base is diversity. There's an enormous amount of diversity, and so where most of us are starting from a place of diversity, right? We perceive separation, distinction, that there's lots of stuff going on, and I am one among the many things going on. So at that level, I perceive that I am separate and you are separate, and I've got my mind and you've got your mind, and I've got my ego and you've got your ego, and I want all these things and you want all of those things. And so that's how we perceive at that level. So the bottom up approach then is the one that most people are trained to take, which is that we're going to try and work at that level and climb our way up. So at that level, I think, think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So that sort of gives us a sense of the bottom up approach. You need to meet your basic needs before you're ready to ascend to sort of higher level stuff. If you don't feel that you're able to clothe and feed and shelter yourself, then you're going to have some challenges in life that are going to make higher level sorts of attainments more challenging. Not impossible, but challenging. So that's the bottom up approach. And then there's what I call the top down approach, which is the approach of transcendence. So it's less popular than the bottom up approach, but still somewhat popular, right? Many people wake up from the bottom up approach. One day they realize, gee, this bottom up approach of, trying to claw and scratch my way up is really slow and painful, and I'm not sure that I'm doing very well at it. And so then they look around and they say, well, might there be another way? And the other way that's often presented, not exclusively, but often presented, is that you can transcend the whole thing. Just go directly for oneness is the answer here. Okay. And so that's all about, let's just, chant Om and sit cross-legged and blast off into oneness. And it's great. You have a few experiences of that, and you realize, oh, I am not who I thought I was. I am not this separate body mind. I am not this personality. I am not any of this stuff that I thought I was. I am, because I've had the direct experience through this practice, through this experience, however it comes about. I understand it comes about through a variety of means. For some people, it happens through psychedelics, and for some people, it happens through meditation. For some people, it happens through extreme athletics and all kinds of different ways that it can happen. It can happen spontaneously, near-death experiences, et cetera, et cetera. But however it happens, especially if it's repeated, then this realization dawns to some degree that, hey, I am not this limited thing that I thought I was. So then what some people do, I was among these people, is they get the idea that, hey, since I'm not this limited personality, body, and mind, and since I've realized that I am not separate, that separation is an illusion, and since I have this direct experience that maybe is repeatable, that I am oneness, then why don't I just keep going for that? Because maybe if I can just keep going for that, eventually I will blot out this separation, and then I won't have to deal with all the muck down here anymore. So it's a pretty seductive, enticing sort of approach because, again, who wants to deal with all of this mess, right? I mean, you got a lot of stuff going on down here at this level. You got health stuff, financial stuff, creative stuff, relationship stuff, a lot of stuff, a lot of discomfort. And it seems to be, and time is very much applicable here at this level, right? At the bottom of the pyramid, it's all about time. It's all about space and distance. You have to do stuff. You see the action, the results of that taking place in time. Versus at the level of oneness, there is no time. There's no separation, there's no distance, there's no time, there's only oneness. If you haven't had the experience, then you'll have to take my word for it. But maybe many of the people here have had a glimpse of that. So, so it can be very seductive because you say, well, gee, why am I going to mess around down here in all this muck when I could just go for oneness? And so you go for oneness and you go for oneness and you go for oneness, and maybe that works. Okay, I won't deny it. Sometimes that works for people. So it's a valid approach. Top down is a valid approach. So that's what I'm calling top down. Just oneness, 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 oneness. It's all about transcendence. Forget about all this muck down here. I have no interest in it. It's all illusion, just going for oneness. And the idea is eventually I'll stop falling back down into the muck. I'll stop identifying with all this. I'll stop becoming delusional, and I'll just stay in that transcendent state forever and ever and ever and ever. So apparently sometimes that works, but I think it's fairly rare. And I won't go into why that is. It's not really necessary for the conversation today, but there's a good reason for it. So in practice, there's a third approach. Well, let me just say one more thing about that, the top down approach. Okay, just to make this clear, because the problem that arises with the top down approach is that it can actually exacerbate things. Okay, so it's like when you as you, let's say, ascend on this hypothetical, theoretical pyramidal structure. Just hold it all loosely. Don't take it too seriously, but just as a metaphor, as a way of talking about it. So as you ascend, we're talking about ascending levels of consciousness. Okay, so at the base of the pyramid, the state of consciousness there is, it's all separate. I'm separate. I am this body mind. I was born. I'm going to die. I've got a bunch of stuff I'm going to do in this life. I got to get stuff. I got to get power over people. I've got to protect myself and yada, yada, yada. Okay, so that's the view down here. And so at that level, it's just, get out of my way. I'm going to get for me and mine. I don't care about you. You're just an obstacle unless you're attractive to me or whatever, right? That's the view at that base level. Now, then you maybe take a step up, and because you've sort of satisfied some basic things, you've resolved some core fears, and your consciousness raises, and you start to realize, oh, gee, I was kind of looking at things in a pretty naive way, thinking that it's all separate. At this slightly higher level, I realized it's not quite as separate as I thought it was. Yes, sure, it's mostly separate. I still am this body and you're still that body, but I start to realize that there's a relationship that's unavoidable. If I hurt you, eventually that hurts me in some way. Even if it's just, if I'm just like the businessman, corporate bigwig, And I've just been steamrolling over other people just to get more for me and mine. And then if I graduate in consciousness and I start to realize, oh, hey, in order for there to be lots more customers for what I'm offering, other people actually need to be reasonably successful in their lives, or else they're not going to buy. So if I'm just hurting everybody all the time and diminishing everybody, then eventually that has diminishing returns for me. Therefore, I start to realize, oh, we're all somewhat connected, and it's in my best interest that you also are happy. Now, it's still kind of a dim view of connection, but it's slightly dawning. Okay, and so this can just increase and increase and increase as our consciousness raises. Hopefully that makes sense. So eventually at the top, so to speak, from this view of oneness, then there's a realization, oh, well, it's all one. There's no me and you. There's not me and oneness. There's just oneness. So the idea of separation has completely gone away. So if at each level, so to speak, of consciousness, there's a we are we hurt more at the lower levels. There's more pain because there's more perception of separation, which is more distant from the ultimate truth. So that hurts. But nature has built something in here that says, hey, since it hurts, you also get a numbness that matches with that. So your sensitivity has been numbed. You're not as aware of the pain, because if you were aware of the pain, you would hurt incredibly. If all you're doing is just steamrolling over others, if you're just viewing others as just objects and you're viewing yourself as an object, that's so painful. You couldn't bear to actually live like that if you felt it. And so it's numbed. This is how it's built into nature. You don't have your awareness is narrowed, and you experience a kind of numbness relative to your level of consciousness that you're operating from, by and large. But now, when you start going this route of oneness, 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 and you're not doing anything for the bottom up, okay, you're not cleaning up your life, you're not improving things down here. You're just blasting off into oneness 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 times a day. Notice what starts to happen. So in some sense, your level of consciousness is increasing. At least certainly your perception of oneness is increasing. But then because you haven't cleaned up any of the stuff in between, you're just falling right back down to the bottom again, into the muck. But now guess what? You're way more sensitive. So I'm betting some people here probably can a light bulb is starting to go on. It's like, oh, gee, that's why since my so-called spiritual awakening, my life has started to become very painful. Because if you just try the top-down approach, or if it's predominantly a top-down approach, or if you don't have adequate bottom-up support, then you're getting increasingly sensitive, but you're not cleaning up the stuff down here fast enough. So it all is a mismatch now. And so there's very high contrast. It's like great levels of awareness, and yet so much sensitivity to all of the pain that you're falling back down into without any sense of how you can actually be empowered to do anything about it. Right? It's like if all I know is that, hey, I can blast off into oneness. And in that state of oneness, there is no problem. This is the truth. In the state of oneness, there is no problem. So that's the beauty of it. That's why it's so seductive and enticing. And its power, okay? But if that's all I know how to do, it's like a parlor trick. Unfortunately, it's not actually going to, it's not going to move the needle very much in terms of progress. All it's going to do is create more contrast and therefore more sensitivity and more pain. And so this is what happens a lot. It certainly happened for me, okay? So that approach of just top down, top down, top down, top down becomes very, very, very painful. And so I am an advocate for a balanced approach, top down and bottom up, or bottom up exclusively. It really depends. If you know, if you can manage it, I guess in some sense, maybe it's even better just to do exclusively bottom up. Nah, I won't. That's not even true because that's too slow. Nobody can do that anymore. The times have changed. You need both, but you definitely need them to be balanced, because if they're not balanced, you're going to be in so much pain. You're going to feel increasingly powerless, depressed, disturbed. Lots of badness is going to happen as a result of that. So you have to have the balanced approach. If you're only taking top down, top down, top down, please do yourself a favor and stop doing that. And I don't think anybody who's here presently live probably suffers from this too much, although maybe some of you do. But I do know, because I've seen some of the comments on YouTube, that some people, not a lot, but some people are still clinging to that view that it's only top down, top down, top down, top down. And so they'll be somewhat disparate, not somewhat, they'll be disparaging of the notion that desire has any value. Okay, they're still rejecting desire. So desire is very important. If you have desire, guess what? You're not going to be able to just suppress it and have that work for you. That will not work. And you can just, hopefully you can just take my word for it. But if you're not willing to take my word for it, please at least start to be really honest with yourself and tell the truth and look and see what the effect of suppressing desire is having in your life. I know it firsthand because I did it, and I know the very, very, very negative consequences. Very negative consequences. I mean, in my own life, it was catastrophic. I was brought to my knees repeatedly, and not just metaphorically and literally, many times, every day, for years. So I'm telling you that you will benefit tremendously from respecting the value of desire. And instead of thinking, oh, I know better and I'm just going to judge it and suppress it, accept that nature is intelligent, and that there's something that you can work with there that's going to help you. You just have to know how to work with it intelligently. So as I often point out, not all desires are actually your desires. You only need to truly manifest those desires that are truly yours. The rest of them you can let go. And so the top-down approach is useful for clarifying that, right? So if you can enter into a state of oneness, which is not hard. I mean, maybe it is if you don't know how to do it. Maybe it is if you're not prepared for it. But for anybody who knows how to do it, it's not hard, at least. So if you have experience and entering into a state of oneness, and just simple breath awareness will help you with this. Okay, if you just slow down and just notice your breathing. Don't try to fix it. Don't try to change it. Don't try to stop it. Don't just notice. So if you're attentive, you will notice that actually just that will, for an instant, will reveal a state of oneness. Because it has to happen, because because that oneness is the context in which everything is happening. Between every in-breath and out-breath and every out-breath and in-breath, there's this moment of, it's like what we call kind of weightlessness. So you imagine that you throw something up in the air, and there's a point at which it becomes absolutely weightless, only for a split second before it again falls. So it's like that between every out-breath and in-breath and in-breath and out-breath. There's this moment of weightlessness in which there's absolutely no motion. And what's revealed in that is the ever-present oneness, the ever-present reality that's motionless. Okay. So it has to happen if you just slow down and you observe your breath. It has to happen. But many times people are not, they're not accustomed to that, so it takes some practice before they start to notice it. Okay, but that recognition of oneness, just consciously entering into oneness for an instant, is very clarifying because it reveals that you have the capability, the capacity for letting go. And so if something's not actually yours, then just let it go. It's really powerful. So if you're, if you've been pursuing something because your parents told you that you should, or because your because your spouse wants it, but you don't, or whatever, so many things, we want the whatever we want because we want to keep up with the Joneses or whatever. So having this momentary glimpse of oneness regularly can help you to realize that those are not yours and you can let them go. It takes practice. You just have to keep letting go, keep letting go, keep letting go, keep letting go. But there are some things that you can't just let go of like that. Why? Because they're your desires. They're the desires that gave rise to this lifetime. Okay. And those are the things that hurt you. It's like if for you the big screen TV or the new house or whatever is not, it doesn't it's not really yours, it's just some borrowed desire, then you can let it go and it doesn't hurt you. So then you just keep practicing letting go, practicing letting go, practicing letting go, and then eventually you're just able to completely let it go and you're happier, you're freer. But then there are some things that you just cannot seem to let go of, at least not very easily, because they hurt you too much. So you know what those things are. If you don't, then you'll find out by just continuing to look. And they usually are things like, if it's the thing that keeps showing up in your life over and over and over, right? This is the thing that you just keep struggling with. So it's some health thing or some relationship thing, or it's some financial or basic like material security thing. Like if you've just been struggling with homelessness, or you've been struggling with how you're going to pay the bills year after year after year, or you've been struggling with creative expression, you've got something in you that's just, that you need to express, but you haven't been doing it, or it's been stymied over and over and over. If whatever those things are, they just keep bothering you over and over and over, and you try and let it go, but you can't seem to let it go. Those things are your true heart desires. And that's the bottom up stuff that you need to clean up. Why? Because if you don't, just notice what happens. If that thing keeps bothering you, where is your attention? It's obvious, right? Your attention just keeps going to that thing that's bothering you, which means that your attention is automatically going to a state of lack, a state of deficiency, a state of separation, right? You're over and over and over automatically affirming, I'm not enough, I don't have enough, I'm separate, I'm fearful, I'm going to be destroyed, life's not safe. Over and over and over, automatically, reflexively, it's happening out of habit. And this is why I say, if you don't clean that stuff up, how can you expect that things are going to improve? It's not realistic to expect that so long as you're going to live in this world, if you don't clean that stuff up, that somehow you're going to just magically ascend. No matter how many times you enter into oneness. It could happen. I'm not going to say it couldn't happen. It could, but if it hasn't happened yet, the chances of it happening are getting smaller and smaller and smaller, in which case it's probably time for a different approach. And that's why I'm proposing top down and bottom up at the same time, a balanced approach, which is we say, great, it's great that I want to daily recognize that I am not limited to this body, this mind, this personality, the story, the narrative, my past, or any of the rest of that. That's great. It's very liberating. It's important and it's true. And I also want to tell the truth, which is I keep getting sucked back into these same problems over and over and over and over. And a good portion of my waking state is occupied by those things. So my attention is automatically, reflexively getting sucked into those things. And guess what? When that's happening, I am not recognizing myself as oneness. So if my aim is complete self-realization, to actually know and live all of those divine qualities which are inherent in the self, then I need to be able to keep my attention there. But since my attention out of habit is automatically and reflexively going to affirming these problems and the conditions of the problems, such as the fear and the resentment and the separation and the body identification and all the rest of it, then I really need to start to clear that up. If I don't do that, then I just need to see that this is an absurd situation that I'm responsible for now that I have that awareness. So how to clean that up? Well, we need to have knowledge of how reality, how our experience is structured. If we don't have that knowledge, then we're going to continue to feel powerless, and then we're not going to actually make any progress. So you think about, if imagine for a moment, if you, when you were 5 years old, if you had been put into put into a professional sports league, pick your sport, I don't care. Okay, if you'd been put into a professional sports league with adults, professional adults, when you were 5 years old, and you didn't know any of the rules, and you didn't know anything about and at all, okay, and they say, okay, good luck. How do you think you would fare in that? And not very well. That's the correct answer, right? Or you could take any other sort of thing, right? If you were 5 years old and you were put into a postdoctorate program for advanced physics, how well would you fare in that environment? And the answer is not very well. So you need to have the proper knowledge of what is going on in order for you to have confidence that you can succeed, so that you can succeed. Now, let's think about the same kind of scenario. So let's say that at 5 years old, you were placed into, little league sports. Maybe could you maybe get better if in the sports, if you were at that level, if you were receiving the training, the information about, hey, here's how we play the game, here are the rules of the game, here's how to develop basic skills for playing the game. Let's do some drills so that you can gain confidence that you know how to do the things. Do you think you would get better? And the answer is yes. And then as you got better, you would progress level by level by level until you would get to the point where you could play at an advanced level. So it's the same here. If what's happened though is most of us, we've been just thrown into the deep end, and it's just like, good luck. It doesn't seem to work very well. So we need to understand how does this all work? What is actually going on here? What is the nature of all of this? What is the structure of all of this? What am I actually dealing with? What are my problems? And how can I develop the basic skills that are going to help me to solve my problems? When you know that, then you can work at it, you can get better at it, and then you will gain confidence that you, lo and behold, can solve your problems. You can then ascend step by step so that your life gets easier, better, and your attention is no longer being pulled automatically and reflexively to those lower states of consciousness, which maintain the problems. So hopefully that makes sense. So that's the basic idea here, is that I'm mostly in these meetings emphasizing how you can understand what's the knowledge of the structure of all of this experience that you're having, so that you can then gain the skills through practice. That's also an important point. Through practice, that will allow you to gain confidence so that you can then solve your problems and beautify your life. And again, why? So that it's for self-realization, so that you can achieve ultimate fulfillment, so that you can have all of those divine qualities at all levels of your existence, which is what the point is, right? A lot of people, I don't know what percentage, but I've noticed quite a few people who seem to really believe that life is just meant for suffering. Well, what a terrible belief. It doesn't seem to be of any benefit to believe that. And it is fundamentally not true. How can I know it's not true? Because I've demonstrated to myself that there's no benefit in suffering other than as an impetus to learn the knowledge so that one can solve the problems and experience integrating those divine qualities into all levels of life. And when that happens, then life is experienced as quite wonderful. So that's the overall context. So in general, okay, that's the context. So now for today, what is this thing that I'm going to share with you that I'm going to get to now? So this is a really important key that will help you immensely in being vastly more successful in all domains of your life, because it's sort of, has a broad efficacy, because it has to do with a very fundamental core understanding of what all of this actually is, what your experience actually is. So you can work with lots of techniques, and you can work with all kinds of things, and you can get some results, but those results will be limited, and you'll tend to become superstitious because you don't really understand what's really going on. So what I'm going to share with you now is going to help resolve all of that to the degree that you actually accept it and take it on and practice it and see the truth of it for yourself. So in order to get very good results, it's very important that you take full responsibility for your experience, and that you keep your attention exclusively on your experience. And I see this playing out in problematic ways for a lot of people, which is why I pointed out. And of course, I've had my fair share of struggles with this, which is also why I pointed out. So I'll elaborate on this a little bit. So think about something that you want to improve in your life. Think about the problem, whatever it is. Okay, so it's a financial problem, a career problem, a relationship problem, a health problem, whatever the problem is. Just choose one. Maybe you have many problems, but just choose one problem, just so that you can actually see how this is actually working. And notice that you've been trying to solve the problem, obviously, right? And notice how you've been trying to solve that problem. And notice where your attention has been in regard to the problem. And to the degree that you have not been highly successful in resolving the problem, I can assure you that what is true is that your attention in regard to the problem has been externally focused. What do I mean by that? I mean that your thinking must be, this has to be true, to the degree that you have not been successful in resolving the problem. It must be true that your thinking has been that the problem is something entirely, or at least partially, external, so that you don't have complete power over it. So let's say it's a financial problem. Okay, then your thinking must be that there are external conditions over which you have no control, or little control, or limited control, that are responsible for that financial problem. You think the problem is a money problem, and that the money is outside, and that there are governments and businesses and banks and spouses and ex-spouses and whatever else who are somehow responsible for that, partially or fully. And therefore you don't have complete power over it. Well, if you don't have complete power over it, then what hope is there? And on some level, you know that's true, that you don't there's no real hope if you don't have complete power. And so as long as you're believing that you don't have complete power because you've been externalizing it, partially or fully, then there you go. You're just sort of stuck. That's why you can't resolve the problem. And we could do this with whatever the problem is, right? So if it's a relationship problem, I mean, that's pretty easy, right? If it's a relationship problem and you have not yet resolved it to your satisfaction, guaranteed you think it has to do something with the other person. you think to some degree it has to do with how the other person is thinking, believing, feeling, behaving, wanting, desiring, whatever else. And so long as that's the case, then you've disempowered yourself. And if you don't feel that you have complete power, then you know that you can't actually resolve it satisfactorily. And so there you go, you're just stuck. Hopefully this is clear. Okay, let's do it with health. Okay, so health, if you have a health problem, then you think, well, if you have not resolved it to your satisfaction, then you've externalized it partially or fully, meaning you say, well, it has something to do with my past. It has something to do with my genetics. It has something to do with what I've eaten. It has something to do with the air that I breathe. It has something to do with the radio frequencies I'm exposed to. It has something to do with the environment that I'm living in, other people's attitudes, their energy. It has something to do with whatever. You got some stories about it that say there's something partially or fully outside of you that is responsible for the health problem. And so to that degree, you don't feel fully empowered because it's not all within you, and therefore you're stuck. You cannot solve it as long as you are putting some or all of the power outside of yourself. But this is the big mistake that we make over and over and over and over and over and over, is we make something or someone outside of us partially or fully responsible for the problem. And a large portion of society is all about commiseration. Hopefully you know what that word means. Commiseration means uh, bolstering one another's misery together, right? Supporting one another in misery, saying, well, you're justified in your misery, and I'm justified in my misery because the power for our misery is outside of us, right? So think about most of social media, most of what passes as news, most of pretty much, most conversations, most of it most therapy has a lot to do with that. It's a lot of commiseration, saying there's something outside of you that is responsible for your problem, and join my club. My club is the club for uh, blaming X for our shared misery. And the theory is it's a failed theory, but if enough of us get together and congregate around this, somehow we're going to feel better. It doesn't work. So how can you help yourself? Well, hopefully the answer to that is clear. Put your attention fully within. Take 100% responsibility for everything. Why? Because you want to solve your problem. I mean, well, I guess I'm making an assumption there. You want to solve your problem. If that is true, if it is true that you want to solve your problem, then you owe it to yourself, because it's the only way that will work, to take 100% responsibility for it and put your attention completely within yourself and stop putting your attention outside or blaming anything or anyone else for it. And boy, isn't that going to be a change? I mean, I'm laughing not at you, at myself, because I'm fully aware of what then will happen. I mean, then the mind is going to go to town with that, and it's going to say, well, wait a second. It's going to try to find all the reasons why that couldn't possibly be true. And so I know, so I know a lot of the ways that the mind tries to do that, and every single one of them is just a delay tactic. So you could entertain them, and if you did that, then you would just be delaying your own success. So you're welcome to do that, it's not wrong to do that, but just know that every time you entertain any of those objections that the mind raises to that, you are delaying your success. And so just be aware of that. And then you have a choice. You could entertain them in a sort of naive way and just say, oh yeah, it must be true. I'll congregate with others and commiserate, in which case you're delaying your success greatly, probably many lifetimes. Or you could entertain them in a sort of critical way, and you could say, yeah, let me take a look and see, is that actually true? In which case, it's much more intelligent, because if you do that, you're going to eventually, presumably, if you're sincere about it, you're going to see that it's not actually true. And then you'll be able to let go of it, and that will help you to then keep your attention within and take full responsibility, and then you can get good results. Faster still is just to say, anything that's external, I'm not going to give that power anymore, period. I don't care. I'm just going to take the fastest approach here and just go all in and say, if it has something, if I'm blaming something or somebody outside of myself, I'm going to stop doing that immediately. Just that would be the fastest approach. But again, I know that the mind can be tenacious with some of its objections, so sometimes it is necessary, at least for a while, to be somewhat methodical about analyzing and seeing that it's false. And so, during the group coaching portion of this call today, if people have questions or concerns about that, I'm happy to address them so that can clear up doubts or concerns that you have, so that you can get on a faster track. But ultimately, as I say, the fastest approach is just to finally see, look, I want better results. I'm tired of suffering. I can see the truth of it, that so long as I don't claim and accept full responsibility and power, therefore I won't be able to solve my problems, right? If anything outside of me has any control over this problem, that means that I'm just waiting. And I'll just keep waiting, because I've been waiting for a long time. I've been waiting for them to change, right? I've been waiting for the government to change. I've been waiting for my spouse to change. I've been waiting for my parents to change. I've been waiting for society to change. And it hasn't been changing. At least it hasn't been changing fast enough. And so if I want the faster results, I need to take responsibility. And when I take full responsibility, then I can get very fast results. So now let's just take a look and see, practically speaking, what does that look like? So what does it mean? What am I actually, practically speaking, responsible for? Okay. So am I responsible for what other people say? No. Am I responsible for what other people do? No. Am I responsible for, I mean, at a higher level, we could say yes, but at a practical level, to get good results, it's better just to see, I'm not responsible for that. I'm not responsible for what they say. I'm not responsible for what they do. I'm not responsible for what the government says. I'm not responsible for what the government does. I'm Because the mind gets hung up on that. The mind says, oh, well, maybe I'm responsible. You get a little taste of, law of attraction or something, and all of a sudden you start thinking, oh, I'm I'm responsible for how that other person is acting like a jerk. No, you're not. That's not a useful or practical way to look at it. Again, at a higher level, yes, but at a practical level, if you want to get better results, don't do that to yourself, because that's just delaying things. What you can do is you can see, what am I immediately able to take responsibility for? If I'm reacting to what that person is saying or doing, what can I do? Practically speaking, right now, what can I take responsibility for? Oh, my own reaction, my own judgments and opinions. I could take full responsibility for that. Let me take a look and see if any of that's actually useful or true. So then I just look and see, okay, so let's use the example. I'll just use some hypothetical examples just to make this hopefully clear, okay, and practical, so that you can actually start to apply it and get good results. So let's say, how do I apply this to relationship problems? So let's say that I'm having an ongoing problem with my spouse. It could be whoever, you fill in the blank, right? Whoever you're having the relationship problem with. But I'm just saying, for this example, just to talk about it, if I'm having an ongoing problem with my spouse, and I've got a whole story that says, well, my spouse doesn't respect me, and my spouse doesn't treat me well, and my spouse does all the, is rude and inconsiderate and does all of these things. I got a long list of all the things that I'm waiting for my spouse to change so that I can be okay. And clearly that has not been working, right? That has only been feeding into this problem. Okay. So instead, now what I want to do is I want to just take a look and see what can I accept total responsibility for right now, immediately, not in the future, not tomorrow, not waiting at all, but right now, because right now is right now is the only time I've got. I want to claim that power now. I want to start practicing that power now. So let me take a look. Oh, well, gee, I've clearly got a narrative going here that is not a helpful one, right? I've got a long list. I keep telling myself, well, my spouse is doing this and doing that, and when my spouse does that, then I'm disempowered and I have to feel bad. So let me take responsibility for that. Gee, that's a bunch of garbage thinking. Let me let it go. Now, I'm giving you the faster version. It's maybe somewhat more advanced, just to say it's garbage. Let me let it go. You can get there. That's the faster way. But practically speaking, for most of us, we need to be a little bit more progressive about it. So we need to actually start to do the analysis to see that it's garbage thinking. So you can use something like Byron Katie's approach with these 4 questions and a turnaround. Okay, it can be a helpful way to analyze. First of all, you have to just pause, slow down, and notice, what am I thinking? What am I believing about this situation, right? So I'm believing that my spouse is a jerk. Okay, so let me do a little bit of analysis there, right? Because I see, if when I'm believing that my spouse is a jerk, I'm saying my jerk spouse is responsible for my problem, then that's disempowering, and so that's just continuing the same pain in my life. So I want to change that. I should be very motivated to change that. That's the point here. I'm tired of waiting. I have been waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. It's not working. So I want to say, okay, I'm tired of that pain. I need to make the change. I have to do it, not wait for my spouse. So now I'm going to take responsibility. I'm going to see, what am I believing here? I'm believing my spouse is a jerk. And because my spouse is a jerk, I can't be happy. Now, again, I could just say, oh, that's obviously unhelpful. I'm going to let it go. Great. If you keep practicing, practice is the key. You have to practice because you've been practicing the problem. So a lot of the times we think, oh, well, that insight should solve the problem. It could, but it's unlikely. Why? Because it's a habit. You've been practicing the problem. So you need to practice applying the insight. Practice applying the insight enough, and eventually you dissolve the bad habit of the thinking that was causing the problem. So don't just think insight's going to solve the problem. Insight might solve the problem, but 99.9% of the time it won't. It's applied insight practically over and over and over, which changes things. Okay. So that's why you have to do this every day, every day. If you want the results, you have to practice it every day. So the more remedial approach, though, before you can just get to realizing that's a terrible belief, I'm letting it go, and now I get to be free, is you can do this analysis. And I'm just suggesting one of many approaches, which would be Byron Katie's analysis approach, which is you just ask this question, is it true? So is it true that my spouse is a jerk? Well, maybe initially you say, yeah, obviously my spouse is a jerk. Everybody knows that. Okay, great. So then you ask the second question, well, how do I know that that's true? Well, now you actually have to slow down a little bit and say, well, okay, it's not just enough that everybody knows it. How do I know it? Well, it's because my spouse, uh, doesn't, gets home and doesn't hug me right away, and instead says, well, why isn't dinner ready? And so that's my evidence now. It started out as just my spouse is a jerk, and everybody knows that. To now I have to actually look and see, well, what do I really mean? Because actually, it's never true that my spouse is a jerk. That's just a judgment. What am I really talking about? I'm talking about some behaviors and my reactions to the behaviors. So what are the behaviors? Well, my spouse gets home and doesn't hug me, and instead just says, where's dinner? Why isn't it ready? Okay, so now I've started to unpack it a little bit. Now the next question is, when I believe that's true, how do I feel, and what's my behavior? Well, when I believe that my spouse is a jerk, then I feel bad and I get tense and give my spouse the silent treatment. Interesting. Just starting to see what's actually going on. It started out as this is my spouse is a jerk and everybody knows it, and that's the cause of my problem. And now I'm starting to see, okay, so as I unpack it, what's really going on is my spouse behaves in this way, and then I behave in this other way, and I feel this way. So that's what's really going on. And then the fourth question is, if somehow magically I was no longer able to believe that my spouse is a jerk, what would my life be like? And you just start to entertain that. Well, I guess maybe if I couldn't believe it, I mean, I'm sure that I do believe it and I'll always believe it because it's just true. But if somehow I was no longer able to believe it, I guess I would have to respond differently. I would, if my spouse got home and just said, and didn't hug me and I wanted a hug, maybe I would just go over and hug my spouse and say, hi, honey, I'm so glad to see you. I've missed you. I love you. And if my spouse says, hey, where's dinner? Why isn't it ready? I'd say, oh, I'm, I understand you're hungry and, and I feel sad that that, that you've asked me where dinner is. But the point here is that you start to see maybe some more helpful ways of responding to the situation, more empowered ways of responding to the situation. So I'm not going to go into, the turnaround or anything here, but that point is just that with that one example, hopefully you can start to see if you just actually start to take responsibility instead of saying it's all about this other person, then new possibilities start to open up. Instead of just waiting for somebody else or something else to change, that inner guidance starts to take place that allows you to take responsibility to be the change. And I know some people will say, oh, well, that doesn't seem magical enough. What do you mean? Come on. I want law of attraction, law of assumption. I want to snap my fingers and everything's just the way I want it to be. Well, okay, that's nice. You can do that. I'm not saying that you couldn't do that. You, you can do that also and take full responsibility. I'm just giving one example here that in many cases is actually more practical or can be used in conjunction with law of attraction, law of assumption stuff. They don't see them as mutually exclusive. Point here is practical. What's going to give you good results? Do that. If you're not getting good results, take a look and see why not. And chances are it's because you're not taking full responsibility. So how would this apply to if we just wanted to take approach of affirmation and visualization and things like that? Well, same thing. Take full responsibility for the whole thing. Instead of saying other people have to be different, just say, what is it you want? That's what you need to be focused on. And if you're saying, I need other things to be different, then you're disempowering yourself. Then you're postponing it. You're saying, I'll only be able to be okay when these other conditions are met first. So then you're dictating to nature the how. You're saying, nature, you who are infinitely intelligent and you're operating everything, you're beating my heart, you're digesting the food, you're operating the entire universe, shining the sun, spinning the planets and everything. I'm going to tell you how it has to be. The only way I can be happy is if my spouse first starts doing these other things. That's the only way, only conditions under which it could happen. Then nature says, well, okay, since you say so, I guess it has to be that way. Good luck. Keep waiting. But you could instead focus on what you actually want, which I promise you doesn't actually have anything to do with the other person. It's just in your mind that you've made it to do with somebody else or something else. So take full responsibility in your visualization, in your affirmation. Stop making it about the other person or the other external stuff. Start focusing on what the end result of what you really want. Keep your attention there. Focus only on that. Refuse to let your attention go to the other stuff that you've trained it otherwise to go to, which is just delaying your good. So if you're saying, what I want is for my spouse to behave differently, then you might get that result. There are a lot of complications with that. because at that level, you're operating from a place of separation, which means you have free will and they have free will. And if you are trying to interfere with their free will, that's only going to cause you problems. Because remember, as you ascend levels of consciousness, you start to realize more and more of the connection, more and more of the oneness, which means that if you're interfering with somebody else's free will, you're actually interfering with your own free will, which means you're stepping on your own toes, which means you're hurting yourself. You don't see that at the level of separation, but you will eventually see it, and then it will hurt. Well, it will hurt all along, but you'll realize why it's hurting at that point. So far better is don't do that. Just go directly to what you want. You don't want them to behave differently. You want to feel different. See, that's the power. You don't want them to behave differently. That's just in your limited thinking that you think they have to behave differently. Why? So you can feel differently. So don't do that to yourself. Don't make it conditional upon anything outside of you. Instead, you just focus on what do you want? I want to feel differently. Well, what do you want to feel? I want to feel respected, empowered, loved, cared for, meaningful, right? That's what I want. Great. Start practicing that. So what would that look like? Well, you just say, you start practicing. I am that. I have that, right? I am powerful. I am loved. I love myself. I accept myself unconditionally, always. I am happy. I am fulfilled. I am peaceful. My world is naturally reflective of that peace, harmony, and love that I experience within myself. But I don't care. I don't look out there for that validation. I look within myself and give myself that and experience that truth within myself. Because that's ultimately what you want. Notice if I'm just harping on the relationship issue, I'll give a few other examples briefly, but just to round this out, if it's a relationship issue and you're saying, I need my spouse to change so that I can feel okay. Well, guess what? Your spouse will change and then you still won't feel okay. Why? Because you have been practicing not feeling okay. So even if your spouse changes his or her behavior, you'll start saying, why are you behaving like that? What's wrong with you? You become very suspicious. You're just looking for reasons to be unhappy. Why? Because you've trained yourself by practicing being unhappy. So if you want the real answer, you have to focus 100% on yourself and give yourself what you actually want, the end result. I want happiness. I want peace. I want love within myself. Okay? Start practicing it. Again, you've been practicing the problem, which is why you've gotten really good at it. If you want the answer, you have to start practicing that. And if you say, oh, I should just snap my fingers and there it is, well, that could work. But if to the degree that that's not working, guess what? Just practice it. Instead of wasting your time saying, oh, it's not working, just say, okay, I'm going to just practice it. Why? Because I now have an understanding of how things work. I understand that I've been practicing the problem. That's why I've gotten really good at it. And now I want to practice the answer. I want to practice what I want. And I have full confidence in knowing that as I do that sincerely, I will get better at it. So you release what you don't want, practice what you do want. Release what you don't want, practice what you do want. Just keep letting go, practice what you do want. Okay, so that's with the relationship problem. Just take a few minutes to briefly give some examples with these other kinds of scenarios just to make sure that this can be clear that this works on all things. So let's say that it's a health problem. Okay, now you just have to tell the truth that you've been trying to solve that health problem with external focus and it has not given you satisfying results. And when I say external focus, I mean that you're giving something outside of you power. You're saying that something outside of you has power to dictate to you your health. And I'm not denying that those things might not have influence, that they might not be factors, but they are downstream. The actual power lies within you. So I'm not saying that this is a, you should feel that you've not got a license to just go, do whatever you want without any respect for your health externally. I mean, there are those who do that successfully if they have enough faith and understanding of how things work. But for most of us, it's going to create an internal conflict. If you've got a strong belief that there's a way to eat that's healthy, and then you start going against that, it can create some conflict. So if you have some realistic, reasonable understanding of what healthy eating means, and it's not too extreme, then that's fine. Just continue to work with that. But then focus primarily on exclusively, really, on the inner. And so what I mean by that is, I mean that you need to take, what can you take responsibility for right now? Okay, so what's the number one cause of health problems? Does anybody here know? I mean, you can't unmute yourself, but I'll give you the answer. The number one cause of health problems is stress. So whatever your health problem, do you think that having more stress is going to make your health problem better or worse? And clearly the answer is worse, right? More stress means worse health problems. So what this is good news. This means that you can take full responsibility for all of the distress that you are in the habit of causing yourself. And then you start to notice, well, we've got a lot of beliefs that say that distress is caused by external factors, right? It's caused by my commute. It's caused by my boss. It's caused by my children. It's caused by my spouse. It's caused by my neighbors. It's caused by my parents. It's caused by the environment. It's caused by all of these things. Well, great news. That means that right there, you've got an awful lot of stuff to work with, a lot of stuff you can let go of. And as you do that, you reclaim your power, and then you're going to start reclaiming your health. I promise you it's true. So whatever it is, and it's not just, it's also the past. This is wow, that's a big one. The past is a huge one, especially with everything, but especially with, no, I don't know if it's especially with everything and with health. The past is an enormous one where we disempower ourselves. We say, oh, the past has the power. Oh boy, what are you going to do about that one? I mean, sure, you can rewrite the past. You can get to that point where you can let go of the past and rewrite the past and whatever. But that's somewhat more challenging. For most people, it's a lot easier just to realize that I don't want to, I don't want to, I don't want to give any power to the past at all. Why am I going to even bother putting a lot of emphasis on trying to reestablish a different relationship with the past? How about I just stop giving power to the past? So notice, if you have health problems, I promise you, you have stories about how your health problems are caused by something from the past. I mean, unless maybe you're the one in a million exception, but for all the rest of us, you've got some stories about how the past is responsible for your health problem. And so what are you going to do about that? You owe it to yourself to reclaim that power and tell the truth about it, which is the past has no power over my health. Why? Because my health is created right now. The conditions, my health state is created right now. My body is an absolute perfect instrument of divine intelligence. It's perfectly capable of organizing and reorganizing itself instantaneously in any and every which way. And that's the truth. That is the absolute truth. But notice that we have these crazy, well, crazy, they're crazy, but I won't call them crazy. I did call them crazy, but I retract that momentarily. We have these beliefs that say, no, the past is responsible. It's because of this, that, and the other from the past. It's because I had that accident. It's because I fell. It's because of the way I ate. It's because of my genetics. It's because of my parents. It's because of the work environment. It's whatever. We've got all these stories. And notice, as long as you have those stories, what are you doing to yourself? You don't even notice it consciously most of the time, but certainly subconsciously and sometimes consciously, you can notice that you're causing yourself an enormous amount of distress. And again, that distress is what? Exacerbating the health problem or fixing the health problem? The correct answer is it's exacerbating the health problem. It's what maintains the health problem, because again, your body is absolutely perfect instrument of divine creation that is instantly manifesting whatever it is that it is instructed to do. So if you're in this moment instructing your body to be stressed, to follow some past template for disease, then there you go. Instant results. So you owe it to yourself then to take full responsibility for that. And you go through the same kind of process. You just have to see what you're believing and what that causes you to do in your life, right? And then you start to undo that and release that stuff and just reclaim your power and say, look, the past doesn't have any power over me. These other people don't have any power over me. If I'm getting stressed out, if I'm angry, if I'm fearful, if I'm resentful, how is that my boss's fault? How is that my spouse's fault? How is that my neighbor's fault? How is that the government's fault? How is that the traffic's fault? It's not. It's impossible. It's an absolute impossibility. And that's good news. It means that you're responsible, which means you can change that right now. You can change that by establishing a different relationship, and you can choose what you want. I choose peace now. I choose health now. I choose freedom now. I let it go now. I don't need to be bound to any of that stuff any longer. I'm free. Just because I've had a history of responding, or rather reacting in exactly the same predictable ways that are stressful and harmful, doesn't mean that I have to continue to do that. I can choose to let go now. I can choose to see that, hey, gee, there's my boss doing that thing. And guess what? I'm responsible for my experience. I'm letting go. I'm letting go. I'm free. I let go. And if you practice it, you'll get better at it. And as you get better at it, then it becomes second nature. And then pretty soon you stop recreating that same health problem. And I know that maybe sometimes that seems too magical or something, but it's just the truth. I promise you, it's just absolutely the truth. But a lot of people, unfortunately, they won't take that to heart. They'll keep looking externally, keep complicating things. They'll keep looking for the next technique or the next, thing. And so they're not putting into practice the thing that's actually going to give them the results, because I promise you, it is that simple. It really is that simple. And just see how simple that is, that it's all within you. It's very enormously complex when it's outside of you, when it's everything and everybody else. Because what are you going to do about that? If you're saying, oh, it's the 5G that's causing my health problems. I mean, look, I'm not a big fan of 5G. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a 5G apologist or anything, but if you say 5G is the problem, then the real problem is that you then are depending on somebody and something outside of you to change that before you are willing to be okay. Which means what? Which means you're not okay. So I do understand the challenge of it, because there's a lot of programmed fear. It's a programmed fear. The stimulus, the fear, the stimulus, the fear, stimulus, fear. So but we have to train ourselves, practice letting go of that association, so that the stimulus no longer triggers the fear or the anger or the resentment or whatever it is. And as you do that, what that means is then you are no longer creating your own problem, because you were only ever creating your own problem. The problem that you experience is your own creation. It's never something outside of you. That's how powerful you are. You have incredible power. You create your body, your perception, your entire experience, always, without any exception, all of it. And so that's how powerful you are. So if you believe that you are disempowered and that something outside of you has control over you, then it's true for you. Why? Because you've just created that. You've said, oh, that person, that 5G thing, that air pollution, that food, that thing from the past, that trauma, whatever, that thing has power over me. Guess what? Instantly, you've manifested that it's true, and you experience it, and you can get tremendous confirmation for it. Why? Because you've created that confirmation as well. So if you're ready for the real healing, if you're ready for real integration, if you're ready for real oneness, which is integrated oneness, not just blasting off into oneness and then falling back into the mess and suffering, then you owe it to yourself to take full responsibility. And it's not a lot of time. I understand, I mean, I've gone way over time today, but it's not a lot of time, relatively speaking, to be able to communicate and then learn these important things. So you might have to work with it for a while before it really clicks for you. I mean, it might not take time. I'll be honest with you. I've seen, I have not bookmarked them, so I don't even remember where to find them anymore. But there have been some posts, some comments on some videos where people have reported some miraculous instantaneous healings. Okay, so it can happen. Absolutely can happen. I mean, I've said that before. Somebody somewhere right now is experiencing a miraculous instantaneous healing of whatever the problem is, health problem, relationship problem, financial problem, creative expression problem, whatever it is. Somebody somewhere is experiencing that miraculous instantaneous complete healing right now. Why not you? It could happen. So yes, that can and does happen. And practically speaking, if you're not experiencing that right now, then just work with this, because I promise you, this is the right knowledge. It's the right information that will help you, but you have to be willing to work with it. You just have to apply it. So hopefully I've made that clear. Take full responsibility. Don't make anything outside of you responsible. Reclaim your power, and then just work systematically, day by day, moment by moment. Practically speaking, you have to practice these things by slowing down and observing how you are producing the unwanted effects in your life, and then change it, let it go, and then visualize what you want, be clear on what you want. Because if you're not clear on what you want, then you're more likely to keep falling back into what you don't want. Because if you just say, I don't want the health problem, I don't want the health problem, I don't want the health problem, well, guess what? You're just focused on the health problem. So you have to let go of the health problem, but then practically speaking, for most of us, most of the time, until we're ready to completely collapse that polarity, we need to actually then put our attention on the positive of what we want. So what is it I want? I want that. I want vibrant, good health. I want confidence that I am capable of doing the things that I want to do in a good, positive way, feeling wonderful, supported, nourished, powerful, empowered, happy, right? So you have to, practically speaking, most of the time, you have to clear the thing that you don't want, clear the ways in which you're recreating that. And then you have to put your attention consistently building out in your imagination what you want. Again, not making it conditional on anything outside of you, not saying, I want that person to treat me nicely. No, don't do that to yourself. I want to feel wonderful. I want to feel respected. I want to feel loved and loving. I want to feel complete within myself, right? So you practice that feeling, practice that knowledge within yourself. Don't make it conditional on anything outside of you, because again, that just slows things down, and it just makes it unnecessarily painful. Go for gold. Go for what you want, 100%. So that's it today. For those who are here live, I'm happy to stay on for the group coaching and answer any questions that any people have. And for those who are on YouTube and everybody else, I suppose, I want to just give a few other notes. Number one is, if you are not here live, but you would like to attend live, you can join us Mondays. And you can do that by getting the information, which you can get if you sign up for my newsletter on my website, joeylott.com. I send very little email, so you don't have to worry that you're going to get a lot of email from me, but you would get an automatic email response when you sign up that would give you the information so you can join live. That's one thing. And when you do join live, you can stay on for the group coaching, so you can ask questions if you have questions. That's an opportunity. Second thing is that I am still offering free introductory coaching calls. For those who are interested in signing up for that, you can go to joeylott.com/intro, INTRO, and I'll provide the links for all of these things in the description below on YouTube. They're going very quickly. People are emailing me saying I can't get any of them. But if you I'm only allowing people to sign up for 2 weeks in advance. And because they go very quickly, oftentimes people go and then they find there's no availability on my calendar. But if you come back the next weekday, then you will possibly find new spots opened up if other people haven't grabbed them already. And there's also a wait list, so you can sign up there. And when there's last minute cancellations or things like that, I'll send out an email. And if you're the first one to respond, then we can get on a call. And those are it's an awesome opportunity. I'm just going to be honest with you, because we can often clear up a lot of stuff and help you to figure out practical steps that you can take so that you can start getting better results in your life with whatever it is that you're challenged with. Okay, so that's that. And then last thing, for those who are interested in a systematic approach to building a daily routine that will help you to get good results, you might be interested in the Manifesting Truth program, which is a paid program. But for those who are interested, it is a great opportunity. You can learn more at joeylott.com/manifesting-truth, and I'll provide the link in the description below. So blessings to you all, and I'm going to end this recording now.